August the 11th, 2025. Guys, you're looking at satellites over the Gulf of America. These are live. It's 5:12 p.m. Central Time as I'm doing this video. And for the last 3 or 4 days as we were doing these type videos, I was showing this system right here, but it was sitting right along the edge of Florida. You had some storms over here. Now, they've kind of pulled north, but this system has moved out into the Gulf. Now the National Hurricane Center is watching it. I'll show you that info. Now, it does not have a chance of becoming a strong storm because it's close to the shore. It's expanding rapidly, but they are predicting it will move ashore before it has time to develop into a tropical storm or a light gauge hurricane, right? But what I'm seeing, guys, is the same thing that happened with Helene up in the mountains. And this could be disastrous. So anybody that's watching in the Carolinas, and I've been through there, Clingman's Dome many times. I always stay in Cherokee. I know that a lot of those areas through there, over in the Gatlinburg and many other places, Blue Ridge Highway, the tunnel there. But get in touch with them because this could overwhelm them just like it did before, just like we saw in Texas, okay? Now, if we can do anything to prevent it, we couldn't foresee Helene and the damage it would do. We couldn't foresee accurately what would happen in Texas. When you saw the moisture building up, we talked about that. We saw the storm coming in to the Carolinas, but both broke records. That's why we couldn't really anticipate that amount of moisture. Now, whether or not there was some influence by rainmakers or whatever, we don't know. But they were in the area a couple of days before that. But right now, this is something that you guys are going to have to watch. And there's going to be flooding all along the coast. You can see coming in now to the mouth of the Mississippi River, coming up into our state here, and just about all the way through Louisiana. This was popping up earlier, but now it's starting to focus right here. Why is that? Notice everything that was pushing offshore is moving into the storm. See that? That's telling you a lot of moisture is being pumped into this, and that it's very hot water, and this engine is starting to crank and hum. Again, if you guys live north of here, I'll back it up and we'll look at that area, but I don't have to tell you the people that live in the Smoky Mountains what could happen. You already know. And there's so much moisture in the atmosphere. Look above it, look around, and you can see all of this right here is following the high pressure zone that may end up steering the mega hurricane Aaron. But right now, this is the first problem. This is just like having suddenly a tropical depression coming up out of the Caribbean and starting to form. It can do just as much damage. Now, right now, it's predicted to go north, but I just pay very close attention to something. And it's pulling in here, and right here it's starting to wrap around it under this cloud layer. That's telling you this engine is winding up. Let's look at it in infrared. Again, I think I'm going to title this Helene Part 2, just so it may catch somebody's eye and we don't have to read about people being pulled out of trees and out from under rocks and things like that, okay? You guys are like we are. When you get hit by Katrina, Camille, Ivan, all of these storms that come in through here, you become very aware of what could happen. And you got a really good dose last year. Let's don't let that happen again. So go ahead and make plans now. Don't wait till tomorrow. This storm's starting to move in. You make them now. If you got to call and get some motel rooms out of a flood zone, do it now. Find the rest of your family. Get them involved. Share the expenses. Even if you got to pile up in a couple of rooms until this passes. This is going to be on the news. And you don't want to be a part of that, right? I want to look at the water vapor before we look at a wider view. Now, this is one of the reasons it's been so hot. The moisture is in the green areas right here. This is the lower level water vapor. We can measure it here near the surface, about halfway up, and then in the upper levels. But the orange and yellows is very dry air. You can tell some of the movement in that area, but this moisture, we saw it starting to back up today. And look at this and pull back into this full, again, it's an engine right now, a turbine. And this is the moisture that's at the surface. Now let's go up a level to what they call the mid-level water vapor. And what is the difference that you're seeing? That at this level, at what we call the mid-level, you've got a lot more moisture, right? You see the blues here. It's not all orange and yellow. You can see those drier areas. But so what we've got is a bottom layer that's full. We've got a mid layer that's full. And when these things start interacting with the mountains, things change very rapidly. Now let's go to the top layer, called the upper layer, water vapor trail. Much more moisture. You can barely see the drier points, right? So again, you got three layers of moisture about to compress all into the mountains. Northern Alabama, you start to rise. I've been through there many times. It starts to rise in that area. But look how far out into the Gulf. Watch this. Starting to affect the Yucatan. So you got about 500 miles right through here, guys. And so moisture's being pulled into the upper level from many places. Look over here. See that? That's counterclockwise rotation. It's very large. It's been moving into this area for a couple of days. It may do nothing more than feed into this system. So this could be 3 or 4 days of rain. Now let's go to one other filter while we are looking at this satellite. Now, this is called the NT microphysics. NT means nighttime. But what we're seeing is an extreme level or multi-layers, really kind of like the water vapor, of moisture building up in this area. This edge is already pulling north. You can see it very plainly here. But look what's just bubbling out here. Like, okay, we got a big pump now. We're going to pump some water out of this Gulf of Mexico and out of the atmosphere. You can see it again feeding in across Cuba, down into the southern sections of this storm, and they're going to meet up really soon. Now, I'm backing out to the wide Atlantic view, but I'm going to stay in the NT microphysics filter for just a moment. Again, here's our storm that we're watching, guys. You've got to be aware of what's going on. Look at the pre-moisture setting in here. And then this monster going to pull up here. This is more damaging than a Cat 3 hurricane that's much drier because of the landscape there that you're dealing with. Here's our storm right here, Erin, Tropical Storm Erin. And notice this pink. You see that? And you see when the sun hits it. A lot of that is Saharan dust layer. Now, something that I'm noticing about it is even though it's part of the sand layer, look at the directions pushing to the south. See that? Southeast or southwest, excuse me, pushing this moisture here. What does that tell you? That this is going to have to be pushed a little further to the south also. And what that does in the long run is instead of going straight in here and catching a curve, it's going to be pushed a little further south, have a little larger dip, may even come into the Caribbean. Don't know yet. I'm just looking at what I see. Either way, it's going to be coming in, but if it dips into the Caribbean, then this thing much more likely to get into Florida or into the Gulf itself. But this is the storm that they're watching called Erin, but look at what's going on under it. And I've said this many times before, and it may become true in this event. This storm, and every year I see it, one storm will come out in front and to try to absorb as much of the Saharan dust layer as it can, because the sand absorbs moisture, kills the storm. You know that. So, and what happens with a storm like this under the Cabo Verde Islands, or one like this, coming out as this is a blocking back. And what it does, Erin is not supposed to decay at all. But I have seen them get into this area and the Saharan dust layer rip them apart simply because it's taking the moisture out of the fuel mixture. It's not supposed to happen. But this is very concerning what's forming below this. And the only reason this system is not moving into just a little bit more favorable waters, again, is this northwest drop here caused by high pressure. But look here, look right here, guys, coming into Texas. And what is this setting up everything up into the Midwest? Moisture here. But right now, of course, you got to keep an eye on this. But you guys really got to focus on what's about to happen into the Smoky Mountains. I can't overemphasize it. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, and I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think I am. We're setting up for another major disaster. At least we have a different FEMA in place. That's not going to save your life, though. Let's take a wide look at the Atlantic under the what's called true color, or what the satellite is actually seeing. You're seeing the morning, you're seeing the evening sunset. There's the sun rising this morning, and here it's setting over Africa, out into the mid-Atlantic right there. Here is our storm right there. But this, again, what's under it is as concerning to me as what is right here. Because, we're not going out of hurricane season. The peak is around September 11th to the 15th, right in there. So everything is starting to happen. I knew it would, unless some freak of nature happened and it stayed very quietly. And that would have been the most dangerous thing that could have happened, guys. You see all these storms, these vortices out through here. They're even watching them, but they're going to be nothing but storms that move up into the northeast towards the UK, into that area. But what they are doing, even as small as they are, they're sucking heat off the oceans. They're like mini fans, or not mini, but compared to a big storm, it's circulating upward like a tornado, pulling up, cooling that air and dropping it back down, and keeping the earth habitable for not only our species, but every species. It's a perfect balance of the creator of everything. Now, while we're in the natural filter, let's back out and look at the U.S., guys. Plus, you've got some of the Canadian provinces and parts of Mexico. This is very concerning. I can't help but say it. And again, we'll look at the report from the Hurricane Center. But you've also already getting moisture here. So what that's going to do is absorb into the top layers of the soil to where everything else is running off into flash floods. Got some pretty interesting storms lining up here into Oklahoma. They're about to hit into Arkansas and get into Missouri, guys. This system in Texas right here. Now, the good thing about the storm moving north is that Texas may not get hit again into that section. But while I'm there, I want to show you a picture. Kind of off the subject, but not really. We've got a picture here, and it came in a few days ago, guys. It's from Sandy Creek, I think is what they called it, there in Texas. This is where it was flooded really bad. And after all that flooding and tearing trees down and houses down, it exposed a lot of bare rock. And what you're looking at is a dinosaur footprint. Man's boots in there. Of course, he's from Texas, should have a boot on. Anyway, look at that. It's a tripod, or three toes. Maybe that's not the correct term. But they dated this back, and this is going to kill the 6,000-year-old people. And they think the earth is that young. But this earth age, guys, is what the Bible talks about up until the flood, and then past that, really second earth age and third that we know about. But there's been earth ages that go back millions of years. This track, they carbon dated now, 150 years old. It's very close to a Tyrannosaurus Rex track, and it was a carnivore. It was a terrifying carnivore. But it wasn't a T-Rex, because when they matched the exact footprints, this, again, I can't remember the exact name of it, wasn't the T-Rex. It looked very similar, maybe a little bigger, but they're 40 million years apart. Couldn't have been a T-Rex, because the time scale on the carbon dating of the T-Rex footprints is 40 million years newer than this one. Just saying, and we've seen this before in other creeks where people would flip over a rock. Not only would you see a dinosaur footprint, but you would see a human footprint also embedded in that sandstone clay. But this is just coming up in the last few days from the flood in Texas. 150 million year old track from something as dangerous or more dangerous than the T-Rex right there in Texas. But guys, we're watching it. Let's take a quick look at the National Hurricane Center forecast map. Sorry I put this in here, but I couldn't help it. Now, this is the latest update from the National Hurricane Center, 4:40 p.m. Eastern Time, so it's been out not quite 2 hours. Here's Aaron, and you can't read it all, but I can. Maximum sustained winds, 45 miles per hour. It is now increased in speed. Remember this morning, it was 20 miles an hour moving west. Now it's 21 miles an hour, and the central pressure is 1,004 millibars. That's Aaron. Now, these two are going to kind of move out like we saw, but this one, again, 0% chance of cyclone formation in 7 days. Why? Because it's going to move ashore before it has time to develop into a tropical storm. So what we do have, though, is a weak surface trough in the northeastern Gulf near the Florida Panhandle. It's been there for 3 or 4 days, just now moving over and moving north. It says is associated with a broad area of disorganized showers, but guys, that's 2 hours ago. This thing, you can tell by the pull from the moisture coming out of the west, out of Louisiana, and being pulled into the center of the storm, that it is not as weak as they think. Anyway, this weak surface trough, this is their words, in northeastern Gulf near the Florida Panhandle is associated with a broad area of disorganized showers and thunderstorms. While development of the system is not anticipated before it moves inland, here's the big part you got to be aware of. Locally heavy rainfall could produce flash flooding along portions of the Florida Panhandle over the next day or so. For more information on rainfall hazards related to the system, see your local weather forecast. But guys, they're just predicting this out along the Panhandle. And that's a terrible mistake that the National Hurricane Center is putting out, because they should really emphasize this thing is so big that by the time the tail end pulls ashore, it will have flooded much of this area right there. You saw the moisture. Now, this is the latest on Tropical Storm Aaron. Again, you can see Saturday by 2 p.m., which will probably happen somewhere between Friday at 2 p.m. and Saturday, but by then, a Category 3. Now, very seldom do you see a 3 form right here and not continue into being a 4 or 5. Just depends on wind shear, things like that. Now, this has been out 36 minutes. Cat 2, Cat 1, you can see how it goes. Right now, we're dealing with 50 mile per hour winds by in the morning, or 2 a.m. in the morning. But it's right now at 45. See that? Moving west at 21 miles an hour. Here is the path. Notice that slight turn to the north and to the northwest. Again, that's going to be controlled by our high pressure area. Quick look at the spaghetti models. And this is what we have. Now, we do see a difference in the purple model. That's the Navy, NVGM right there. This morning, the Navy and the Canadian model, CMC and the pale green, were both the further south in their model projections, weren't they? See that? So the Navy is starting to anticipate a turn more to the north. Again, that's perfect. The last thing you would want to happen along the East Coast right now with the system setting in the Gulf is additional rainfall piling in here. Not saying that it won't happen, but maybe not a direct, powerful impact, right? May have some storms move inshore. But at this curvature that the Navy is showing, guys, everybody in Bermuda, and I think we have a submarine base there, you guys be very aware of that. Now, what will happen as it gets closer, these two models, the Navy model, Canadian model, will start to come together somewhere in this area. But right now, this is the info we have. Again, this has been updated 38 minutes ago at 6 p.m. Eastern. We're watching it, guys. You watch it. A lot going on around this planet and in this nation. Be safe.